Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action. Allen. Deep downfield. Wide open.
Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep podcast. As always, I'm your host today, Kevin Masseri, here with Mike Bunt to talk about the thrilling one-score victory, 23-20 over the Ravens. We're going to focus our time here talking about the Ravens game as it was a thriller. A lot of good information to come from it. A lot of good data and statistics to come from it that I have jotted down here. Some stats, some fun things, some fun nuggets. And Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. The week's always better after an impressive Bills win. It might have been ugly for a half, but all that counts is the W in the win column. So I'm feeling good today.
And conversely, last week against Miami, it was kind of the opposite, where a lot of it wasn't that ugly and just didn't score. Immersed 500 total yards. This week was a little bit different. Slow start, sloppy rain, wind. I tweeted out, Mike, at one point that the Bills kind of got rid of a couple of different problems there. The weather element, they got rid of the one-score game element, the close game time management issues that people believe that the Bills or Bills fans even think that they have that, just may or may not be true, Mike. But it looks like they checked all the boxes on some of those like question marks that they had around where the Bills might fall short, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That one-score game narrative is quieted, at least for the time being. And the ability to come back and then win minus some quality players. The Bills did a good job of shutting down some of the narratives that were in the media prior to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a story of two halves. No doubt about it. The Bills have only allowed 7 points in the second half of 4 football games. Pretty impressive defense there. No matter who seems to step on the field, you can't use it's against the last ranked teams. This is against some of the league's best, mainly minus the Titans. Outside of that, the Rams have struggled at times. The Ravens do have an MVP candidate on their team, and the Dolphins by all stretch right now, kind of still sitting number one in the AFC. So definitely a stretch of football to only allow 7 second half points this entire season. A really remarkable defense. They're still very high in most defensive categories. Now that's missing some very solid starters in Trey White and Micah Hyde, who's out for the season, as well as Dane Jackson at times. You've had Benford out at times. Like, how impressive is it that the Bills defense is doing what it's doing, at times missing half of its secondary?
Yeah, it's incredible that this defense has not lost a step, essentially, in spite of all the injuries that they've faced. And there's a couple things that really stand out about it. Credit to the defensive line. Their pressure rate is the highest graded of any unit by Pro Football Focus. So they're getting to the quarterback. Might not always be sacks, but they're getting to the quarterback. Von Miller with 3 sacks. Rousseau with at least a half sack in every game so far this season. And the linebacker play has been outstanding. I know Eric and the guys have already talked about that a little bit this week, but you look at depth of tackle this year compared to last year. Milano and Tremaine Edmonds are making tackles at the line of scrimmage. They are making plays, and a lot of that is because they're getting much improved defensive line play in front of them. Daquan Jones is taking care of business. The second and goal tackle by Milano, Bryant took out 3 blockers to set up a lane for Milano to attack and essentially set up the Bills defense to make a huge goal line stand. So I do want to give credit to the secondary, but the players in front of them have made their jobs much easier as a result. But obviously, Kaiir Elam, tremendous start to his rookie season. Christian Benford was looking good before then. Damar Hamlin playing solid in place of Micah Hyde. And is anyone in football playing better at safety than Jordan Poyer at this moment? Because what an incredible start. That second interception he had on Sunday was just fascinating, to go from near the field goal post to the outside and intercept that at the last second. They're just playing incredible at every level at this moment. And just imagine once they get Trey White back, once they get a healthy Ed Oliver, Jordan Phillips back in the lineup, this defense is just tremendous all around.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. Like, there's some good statistics to come out of this game. Like, really, PFF is a favor of some of the things that the Bills are doing. Actually, Mike, one thing that I have noted here, the number one strength of schedule per PFF, not necessarily win percentage. So that's pretty, and it's high on win percentage too, in terms of its strength of schedule. So the Bills have pulled off a 3-1 schedule, which I wanted to ask you one thing here quickly while we're on the topic. Would you have signed off on 3-1 to start the year?
Yeah, before the season,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
Because I would have assumed that one of Baltimore or LA would have given the Bills trouble, and it ended up being Miami, not the team I would have predicted, but it hardly ever goes the way you expect it to go before the season. So
Yep.
yeah, I would have taken 3-1, and now the important thing is going 2-1 the next three to get to 5-2. If you told me before the season you're sitting at 5-2 heading into the final 10 games of the season, I would tell you there's a chance at 13, 14 wins. So if they can find a way to beat Pittsburgh and then split Kansas City, Green Bay, obviously, ideally, you want to beat Kansas City if there's either of those games you're going to drop. But I think 5-2 is doable right now. Green Bay has not looked that sharp to me. And yes, Kansas City is looking pretty scary at the moment, but we have to remember the Bills went toe-to-toe with Kansas City last year, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do the same this year.
Yeah, they're a notch worse. I'm sorry. They played a horrible game against Indianapolis, against a bad team. Indianapolis is not very good. Like, they're in disarray, like, talking about total changes there in that front. And obviously, not everyone's going to go undefeated, but at the same time, I do believe the Bills play the Chiefs particularly well. One of their biggest problems is Tyreek Hill, as the Bills have struggled with him in the past. Did okay against Miami, but that game was a little, as we already all know, was a little weird. But the Kansas City game, they have a lack of receivers, and I am not that impressed with what they've been able to do outside of one game, and that was just this past week. They just absolutely dominated in that game. And a bad Tampa team, Mike. Tampa did not look the same. They looked pretty bad. Brady looked old for once. I mean, he's finally starting to look a little old. That defense didn't do what Tampa defense is known to do. And quite frankly, Kansas City was better. And they still allowed 30 plus points. So I think I saw it was Tampa's like second loss ever, scoring that many points and losing, which seems weird. Only 31 points and losing to Kansas City. But it is a statistic that I thought was pretty interesting. But there's just a lot to like about the squad. There's a lot to like about what they are able to do. In the rain was very interesting to me. I just didn't think that were the elements for a comeback, Mike. I didn't see that would happen with those kind of elements, as really hard to come back, and you could barely throw the ball. It was probably worse than it looked. It kind of reminded me of the Colts game of last year. And early on, I was like, it's going to be a repeat. This happens. Hopefully they can rebound at 2-2. And that was as impressive to me as this one score game phenomenon was. Can they actually come back in a game when the weather elements are bad? To me, the weather elements are huge because we have played so many of these games in these weird weather, just whether it's 500 degrees, whether it's 0, whether it's 100-mile-an-hour winds. It just seems like that's followed the Bills underneath Josh Allen, and it's really nice to be able to win one of those.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't feel confident about their comeback chances when they were down 20-3. I know there was a lot of times some people might say they still believed in this team. The Bills have struggled in the elements at times offensively. So that was more my big concern. The Ravens defense obviously not strong this year, but they were playing well early. And when it got to be 20-3, I personally thought it just wasn't the Bills' day. But right before the half, you knew they had to score a touchdown at that point in time. That was a nice indicator of, okay, they still have their heads in the right place. This is still a ball game. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to play a near flawless second half, but that's what they came out and did. as you mentioned, only 7 points allowed all season in the second half. And yes, the offense was much improved in the final 30 minutes, but I really thought it was the defense that gave the Bills the opportunity to win the game. It's not easy to stop the Baltimore Ravens offense. They entered as the number 1 DVOA offense in the entire NFL, and to shut them out for 30 minutes in any elements is quite impressive. And the Bills offense, they just did what they had to do. It wasn't even pretty at the entire second half, even when they were moving the ball at times. I thought the last drive of the game was honestly their most impressive drive as far as moving the ball. But to do that with Jamison Crowder out, Isaiah McKenzie out, you're playing with essentially Stephon Diggs, a hampered Gabe Davis, a somewhat hampered Dawson Knox. You really don't have much confidence in your second and third string running backs at the moment, so you're relying on Devin Singletary behind an offensive line that right now Pro Football Focus has is the bottom ranked run blocking unit in the NFL, and you find a way to come back. That is quite the job by both sides of the ball to hamper down when it mattered the most and to make the plays. And I still look back to that 3rd and 3 where Allen got just enough loft under it to get to Dawson Knox. Just a huge play. You punt the ball back to Baltimore, they probably win that game at that situation. So credit to the Bills, because 3-1 versus 2-2, two totally different situations right now, especially with the psyche of Bills fans if they were on a 2-game losing streak.
Yeah, you'd have to press against the Steelers, and not that they wouldn't have gotten it done either way, whether they were 2-2, 1-3, or 3-1. I do believe the Bills are a better team. They're favored by a lot. There's a lot to break down in that. And Sean McDermott generally doesn't, just like Bill Belichick, doesn't lose to rookie quarterbacks. There's a lot of good statistics there that point in the Bills' favor. They're missing their best player by far in TJ Watt. So there's just a lot that goes in the Bills' favor. However, this Bills still would have been pressing coming in at 2-2, knowing that you have KC and Green Bay on the deck. That you just absolutely need to do anything possible to make sure you take care of business against Pittsburgh. It's not as simple as that. They can be a little bit more relaxed, but one thing to come out of this game where it was just the continued dominance overall of the defense. Matt Milano, the number 1 rated linebacker in the league per PFF. Boogie Basham, the number 1 rated edge defender in the NFL per PFF. Von Miller's 4th out of 108 qualifying defensive ends. Gregory Rousseau, 16th in the NFL out of same 108 qualified players. You have Jordan Phillips, who ranks very highly when he's in the game. AJ Epinesa, 49th out of 108, so still very serviceable there in his role. So you have a pretty dominant edge defensive role. You have Kaiir Elam already, 41st ranked cornerback. It's pretty high, considering what his tests have had to be so far against a couple of good offenses. And it's just been a really good performance all the way around here from this team in many different facets. And then, if we bring up Tremaine Edmonds, 27th out of 81st linebackers, he does do stuff that PFF personally doesn't like, but he's been very good this year. So being 27th out of 81, the Bills are just in a position to where their front 7 specifically is good as any in the NFL, period, Mike. And we are getting the pressures and the hurries that the analytics side, but now we're starting to trickle in the sacks. So I think that the combination of the two should make the analytics people happy, and then the sacks should make the numbers, like the eye test, people happy, right?
Yeah, and that's what we've been talking about all off season. They were already good analytically getting pressure, and their numbers were hovering around the top 10, but they accumulated a lot of those numbers in just a few games last year where they really lit up opponents. Right now, it seems like a more consistent effort week by week, which is very important. And then another thing you have to give credit to the Bills on Sunday was their defensive adjustments in the second half. Leslie Frazier starting to blitz a little bit more. And ideally, the Bills defense, they don't want to blitz that much. They want to get pressure from the front 4 and play coverage and stay in nickel. But it was the element of surprise that really got the Ravens. They didn't expect it, and the Bills timed it very well. And part of that is what got Lamar Jackson off his game. So credit to the Bills coaching staff making the necessary adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. And you hit it you hit it perfectly. Kaiir Elam stepping up. All these guys in certain situations are stepping up. The only thing that you can maybe be a little bit nitpicky on the Bills defense so far this season is possibly their run defense, but even that isn't poor. Pro Football Focus has them in the middle of the pack overall, 16th overall, but they're playing minus Jordan Phillips, Ed Oliver, and they missettle for a game, so that makes an impact overall there. But that's really nitpicking when you're talking about the secondary playing without some of their top players and still playing shutdown defense. You've already played two of the top DVOA offenses in the league, and you haven't allowed an opponent to get over 300 yards yet this season. That is not good news for the Pittsburgh Steelers coming up with a rookie quarterback in Kenny Pickett, who just threw 3 interceptions in 1 half. Do want to respond to one quick comment before I toss it back over to you. RC3 here. I understand the Ravens defense wasn't phenomenal in that the Bills offense made mistakes. But the one thing is, in the weather, you don't know if you're going to be able to turn that around. There was countless drops early on in that game by both teams. So yes, the Bills' mistakes were holding them back, but I still want to give them credit for being able to overcome that in those elements. Sometimes it's hard. Gabe Davis was struggling to hold on to the ball. Obviously, Josh Allen threw a dart that went through Stephon Diggs' hands, and people remember the Crowder drop and the James Cook drop. Those are some guys that are good at catching the ball. If they're dropping the ball, I'm going to assume the elements played a definite factor in their ability to play as well as they normally would.
Yeah, and let's not forget the Ravens started at the 5 to start the game after a Josh Allen interception. So, yeah, sure. Like each team, I think put each other's offenses in pretty good situations to win games. But the Bills defense held when it mattered. Analytically, was the move to go for the touchdown? Probably. You have Josh Allen on the other side. The weather element was the weird part where I'm probably considering a field goal more there in this game than I would be normally in normal situations with Josh Allen in a clean moving offense. Like, yeah, like you got to score touchdowns to beat him. He's going to go down and score. Enough people have seen Josh Allen in numerous settings be able to score there. So I don't blame him for going for it. Honestly, I just factored he would. I didn't even know that would be the discussion point. I was just like, he's definitely going to go for it. I didn't even think he'd kick a field goal in that situation.
But John Harbaugh, he always goes for it in similar situations.
I don't see him the way he's got Lamar able to. I just don't see.
It's an easy debate topic the day after, especially when it doesn't work out. If he would have gotten it, they would be praising him all Monday for going for it, being aggressive with a former MVP quarterback. The percentages say the Ravens had about a 3.7% better chance of winning if they went for it compared to kicking it. I personally don't think that's a decision that's good or bad either way. If you kick it and you get the 3 points, there's a good chance the Bills go down the field, get a touchdown.
Well, Harbaugh also justified it by saying you make the Bills a four down offense now because now they have to come back, which is an interesting point.
And he's also thinking at this point in time if the Ravens don't score, the Bills are going to get the ball at the 2-yard line. And personally, I thought the Ravens were going to score. I was surprised at how the play worked out. He had 2 open guys. He missed the first one to the left, and then obviously he had the guy back in the end zone where he was too late getting the ball. Credit to the Bills' pressure on the play. But normally you need 2 yards. You have Lamar Jackson. You figure even if guys are covered, he's going to be able to run for 2 yards. So he'll figure it out. And I think they said something like the Ravens were 80% on 4th down situations prior to that. So I think it became a talking point, but I really don't have an issue with the Ravens going for it, even if I was a Ravens fan. But credit to the Bills to making a play and then making the Ravens pay by going down the field. Like we said, if the Ravens defense gets a stop on that 3rd and 3, the Ravens still have a tremendous chance at winning the game. So that play didn't win or lose.
Because the Bills don't have a 4th down to go for, whereas they would if they were down 3.
Yeah, that play didn't win or lose the game for either team. It's just the Bills stepped up, and you give them credit for doing so.
The Bills did it against the Titans the year prior. Like right when they lost, they could have tied it. It's similar. They could have tied it with a field goal, and they went to like 20 seconds left too. It was even a little bit more aggressive.
And we were all okay with it at that point in time. So,
but he slipped.
Yeah, I mean, you trust your all-pro caliber QB. It comes down to who do you trust more? your MVP caliber quarterback or your defense that has been getting destroyed by teams all season.
Right. And,
so yeah, a lot of the
and your defense, but getting put on the field on the 2 with the Bills offense that has been okay, but not perfect in that game. It's not like they were roaring in the KC game. Yeah, you would probably not give the ball to Josh Allen, but this was different. This was sideways rain. Like
I hate when they make it all about analytics too. The analytics supported the decision, but even without bringing analytics into the conversation, there was still sense for why he made the call that he made. Too often now we're results oriented with our criticisms. Oh, it didn't work out, so it was the wrong call. No, like they didn't execute. You can have the right call and still not execute, and that's just what sports are. Like that's why you have an offense and a defense. It just played out, unfortunately. Well, good for Bills fans, but unfortunately for the Ravens. And
don't forget, like people get played to pay defense. Shaq Lawson had a good pass rush. He couldn't go to his left, and that wasn't Lamar's fault. Even Josh Allen couldn't have thrown to his left on that play. So that receiver was out, and yeah, he should have. I mean, he's still under pressure, needs to throw a complete dime, and that's the exact play the Bills safeties make, though. It's the exact play that didn't get made against the Dolphins, the exact play almost, where Tua rolls to his left and hits, and Jaquan Johnson can't break on the ball. And I was actually really excited to see Hamlin get the start because I think he was the better player the week prior. Jaquan Johnson's actually the lowest rated Bills defender on the team, so he did struggle. The Bills weren't on the field a lot against Miami, but their weakest link by far was Jaquan Johnson. And just by swapping out Jaquan Johnson for Jordan Poyer, the Bills offense gets a huge boost. And then you throw in Dane Jackson over a former UDFA and Ingram, and you have a complete Dane Jackson. You kind of have a resurgence there on the Bills defense to where, yes, you can be okay with not having Ed Oliver and a couple others because that's a pretty solid, not great, a pretty solid secondary. And then this week and maybe going forward, I do believe Sean McDermott said, he mentioned even Kumaro, who I thought was out for longer, as well as Ed Oliver should be back in some fashion this week practicing. I'm hoping that leads to them playing against the Steelers here this weekend. And the Bills do have a wide receiver issue, Mike. I wanted to touch on that. Crowder's out for 10 to 12 weeks, even if they want to bring him back. We'll see. You have Kumaro, maybe in, maybe out. You have the serious concussion protocol going on with Isaiah McKenzie. You're down to just 3 receivers and Shakir, and then you have a banged up-ish Gabe Davis. Do the Bills bring in Tavon Austin? What do you think that what's the plan there at receiver? Although they do have their 1 and 2, and a lot of people are excited about Shakir. What should happen to the Bills and their receiving core, which is missing 4, 5, and 6 really?
So there's some real concerns with the Bills wideouts right now. The unit was good entering the season. I would say skill player wise, the Bills had a top 10 core of skill players. You count Knox in there, Singletary,
sure.
Diggs, Davis, and the rest of the guys. But as you start suffering these injuries to your slot guys with Crowder and McKenzie, who knows the status of McKenzie going forward with concussion protocol, and you don't have Kumaro as your insurance for Gabe Davis, basically forcing him to play even if he's not 100%. They're not a great-looking unit right now overall. Even Knox not 100% being on the injury list of late. It makes things tough for the offense, and it kind of makes Josh play a little bit superhuman. Now, the great thing about the Bills is Josh normally does step up and play great, even when he has things going against him. But you can tell right now, looking at some of the deeper numbers, the Bills' offense is struggling just a tad. They're around 10th in DVOA. They're not gelling on all cylinders right now. The run blocking is a little bit of a struggle. But they're going to have to figure some things out with these wideouts because they are limited right now with what they can do. I think, obviously, you're going to have Diggs be number 1, and you're going to have to rely on him a lot going forward until you can get some guys healthy back in the lineup. Davis does not look like normal Gabe Davis to me right now. He's still playing over 90% of the snaps, but his production just isn't there. Had some tough drops. Obviously, the weather contributes to that. I'm excited about Khalil Shakir. I think this kid has ability. I think he can step up and really show that he deserves to get more playing time this week by having a good performance against Pittsburgh. What do they do behind him? Well, that's going to depend on the health of McKenzie and Kumaro going forward. If McKenzie can't go this week, there's a good chance that you're going to have to call up a couple guys from your practice squad. You might need to bring up Hodgins and potentially Tavon Austin. Obviously, you and I love the Odell Beckham Jr. idea, but that's not something that would solve their issues at the current moment. That's more a month, 2 months from now at the soonest. So while I would love the Bills to add an OBJ, I think the best situation is what some of the air raid guys were saying earlier, elevating Austin and elevating Isaiah Hodgins, because they have some familiarity with the Bills right now. And even though they aren't what you would want as your first options, it's better than getting some wide receiver off the street that has no continuity with the offense and could be off the mark. So they're kind of limited what they can do, but I would expect a couple of call-ups from the practice squad if McKenzie is unable to go.
And the Bills did a really good job with Lamar Jackson, and who played Lamar Jackson was Tavon Austin. Was told that there is some plans to see him at some point. He said it wasn't this week, meaning the Ravens, but he definitely deserves to be called up. We'll see if he's more of the slot, fast speed guy that they're looking for, or if they're looking for that bigger bodied, who both could be active, because he's more of a Kumaro replacement in a Hodgins, and you have more of an Isaiah McKenzie replacement in Tavon Austin. You're going to need someone to return kicks and punts without Crowder. Mike, I do believe you see both of them this week, and maybe one of them does something enough to show that they're, aware and relevant to be on the roster. We'll see what happens with Jamison Crowder's roster spot here going forward. I don't think the Bills will miss Crowder that much. He showed flashes, wasn't quite what I thought he could potentially be. So I don't believe the Bills will miss him too much. Where they will miss him is the depth of the team. Now you're reaching into the practice squad. How much continuity is there with Tavon and Isaiah? Maybe there's some. So I do believe that you'll see both of them this week. They do like to have 5 active on game day. So they do need, if they're both out in terms of McKenzie, you will see both of them here this weekend. The Bills do need to have 5 active receivers on the roster, but I still think neither of them play over Khalil Shakir. I think Khalil Shakir against a Steelers defense has earned reps for at least a game. I think he's earned reps.
And you know what? He was sharp on his limited reps on Sunday, and the fan base has been wanting to see more of him. And I think he's up for the challenge. You and I have been talking all offseason about Khalil Shakir. Yep. He was we thought he could be a day 2 pick, and he fell to the 5th round. And a lot of people you're judged based on where you go in the draft, but that doesn't mean that's where you needed to fall to. Shakir was nasty all training camp. He was great during the preseason. I believe I heard he had 13 receptions on 13 targets in the preseason, was getting open all during camp. So I want to see how it translates given the opportunity on Sunday afternoon, because I really think if he can come out and have some decent performances, I'm not even talking about huge games, I think he could earn a role sooner than later. And down the line, I think Khalil Shakir is going to be a guy that's going to be more valuable to this team than an Isaiah McKenzie or some of the other wideouts that we've been talking about. I really do think that Shakir has a chance to be an important player on this Bills team. Maybe not this season, but down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the Steelers coming in here and talk about them for a brief minute, you got some pretty good offensive weapons, a little bit different than the Ravens team, who is really strong at quarterback, weak at certain weapon positions. But you're going in with Najee Harris. You're coming in with Pickens, a nice looking rookie receiver, Freiermuth, a good sophomore tight end, Chase Claypool, who's always shown the ability to be good, even though he's limited this year, Deontay Johnson, who's definitely good. So there's definitely some very talented skill positions here in the Steelers, which is interesting for a Steelers team that usually relies on defense. And without TJ Watt, there's just a lot of struggle on the defensive side of the ball. They're losing to the Jets. They're not looking good across the board. Edmonds and Fitzpatrick's a pretty good safety core. Outside of that, though, they definitely have some struggles across their front seven. They're rolling Miles Jack right now, who's been okay. Devin Bush, who's been okay, hasn't been great yet. Levi Wallace, 89th in the league at cornerback room. So there's going to be definitely he's been in and out of the lineup. Arthur Mollett is their nickel. He's been not very good in the nickel. And Sutton's been okay at the boundary. A little bit of success from Highsmith and Hayward there in the front, and then Ogunjobi and Reed have been below average. So it's definitely not as good of a defense as the Steelers normally have. They definitely have some good skill players. We're probably going to see rookie quarterback Kenny Pickett at this stage of the game. So it's going to be interesting to see. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, look horrible throwing the ball though. As McDermott does like to confuse other teams. Rookie quarterback does a really good job in these situations, whether it's the Mike Whites, whoever these lower end quarterbacks that are coming in and looking to compete against a very confusing, very situational man cover 2 defense that does seem to give rookies some challenges.
Yeah, if you're Pittsburgh, this is the worst case first start for Kenny Pickett going up against a Bills defense that I believe is the top unit in the NFL. I understand they were kind of forced into the situation by the way Mitch Trubisky was looking. Trubisky was horrible. There's no excuses. I thought Mitch was going to be all right in Pittsburgh this year. Was not the case. They had to make it a switch, and Pickett almost guided them to a win over the Jets, but unfortunately made some poor mistakes late in that ball game. But you're right. The Steelers have some quality offensive weapons, but for whatever reason, they just have not been able to get things going in recent years. I don't know if it's scheme. Obviously, there's a lot of jokes about Big Ben's arm just being gone in recent years and not being able to extend the field. Hasn't made a difference with Mitch Trubisky in the lineup. Are they going to take chances with Kenny Pickett? I find that very hard to believe. I think they are going to kind of ease him in slowly, probably rely on a heavy run attack, which if you are going to attack the Bills defense, the run defense is probably the one area where you can maybe have a little bit more success. But if the Bills know they're going up against a one-dimensional offense with an inexperienced play caller, it doesn't look good for Pittsburgh. And the one thing you can give the Steelers credit for, they do have a solid defense, DVOA ranked 10th in the league. But they don't have TJ Watt. He was the one that was wreaking damage last year against the Bills offensive line. Melvin Ingram was the other person that was causing a ton of issues for the Bills offensive line. He's down in Miami now. I can't see the Pittsburgh defense limiting the Bills enough like they did last year to make this a ball game. I think this is a game where Pittsburgh, they might score 10 points. The Bills could score 24, 27 points this game and win by 17 points. I just don't see how the Steelers are going to be able to keep up unless Kenny Pickett had some miraculous effort. But on paper, this isn't even close to the same matchup as last year.
No, not even similar. They're missing a lot of their better players. Najee Harris is only rushing for 3.5 yards per carry. Talk about a team that also can't run block. There definitely some real big challenges blocking for what should be one of the best running backs in the league for all your fantasy players out there. Already has 58 attempts 4 weeks in. That's a lot in the modern day NFL for a team that's 1-3. Freiermuth is by far, him and Deontay Johnson are by far the only guys getting targets over there. They both have 30 plus targets. That's a ton. They're not really getting Pickens. He's shown flashes involved, and Claypool's kind of gone MIA for the kind of talent he does have. So other than that, they do have some talented starters. They don't have a lot of depth. Their offensive line's not particularly good. They definitely have some decent defensive players, but without TJ Watt, it's just not a very scary unit to me, except for Alex Highsmith, who has 5.5 sacks. But outside of that, and you always know what you're going to get with Minkah Fitzpatrick. But outside of that, it's just still a lackluster group. But Alex Highsmith's kind of making up for it with his production so far as a former third-round pick a couple of years ago in 2020. So he's been pretty good by all accounts, already almost touching his total career number of 6 sacks in the first 4 weeks. So he's somebody that will be paired up nicely with TJ Watt going forward. But I do believe that the DBs, they struggled late against the Jets. The Steelers DVOA is a little bit inflated to me. They played the Browns with a bad quarterback play. They played the Patriots with bad quarterback play. They played the Jets. So to me, it's just a matter of like.
And they lost to the Patriots,
all three of those,
and the Browns, and those were both games where New England in Cleveland, despite the close scores, they they both controlled those contests. So Pittsburgh has not looked good outside even the Cincinnati win. That was the defense having a heroic effort, shutting down Joe Burrow, forcing a lot of turnovers, and they still should have lost that game in the end.
Yeah, definitely. And that's when the Bengals have been struggling. They've been an up and down team themselves, but you're talking about beating Mac Jones, Jacoby Brissett, and Zach Wilson. It's going to they lost all three of them, but inflating their defensive DVOA a little bit there. It's going to be completely different now that they have a streak of Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Tua, Jalen Hurts, back to back. That DVOA is going to slip real quickly depending on when TJ Watt can get back. Because that's going to even out with their first 4 quarterback appearances that they've had. So I don't believe the Steelers are legitimate. I don't think that there's really any huge competition for these wild card spots, Mike. That's kind of how I wanted to kind of wrap up today's show, was your overall look of the AFCs, particularly in general. I mean, you got obviously, you got the Chiefs and the Bills at the top right now. You got the Dolphins, really the third best team in the AFC somehow. Right now they are. That's kind of where they're sitting nicely. You still have, the Bengals, the Titans, and the Ravens right there. But outside of that, you're now looking at a team in the Browns without a quarterback right now, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and maybe the Broncos and Chargers. But there's not all of those teams are 5-5 though. So
yeah, I'll be quick because I know you do have to get going soon. We unfortunately have to wrap up a little bit early today. I think right now it's a conference that's all about Buffalo and Kansas City. It's the same thing it's been for the last 2 seasons.
Yep.
There's no team, no other teams that are up to the level of the Bills and the Chiefs. We wanted to talk the Chargers into that conversation. They're not there, but I'm not done on the Chargers. It's going to be tough with Herbert hurt all year, but I do think the Chargers are still in one of the top tier, that next top tier behind the Bills and the Chiefs. They're my number 1 wild card. Dolphins number 2 wild card. In the AFC South, it can go anyone. I think Jacksonville has a chance to be a playoff team in that division. The early season DVOA is actually pretty high on Jacksonville overall. They are the number 4 DVOA team overall in the NFL at this point. So is Tennessee that great? Is Indy that great? I don't know. Money would probably say Tennessee wins the division, but wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville gives them a fight for it. And then if you're talking third wild card, I'm thinking probably Cincinnati, but I think Cleveland, if they had Deshaun Watson this year, would easily be a playoff team. I don't feel bad for the Browns because this was a situation they knew they were getting themselves into, and they chose this. But I really do feel like Cleveland is one of the top 7 teams in the AFC, and they're losing these close games to average teams because they just have a subpar quarterback leading the way. They shouldn't have lost to the Jets. That took a miracle finish. And then losing to Atlanta. This Cleveland team should be 4-0 right now, waiting for Deshaun to come back. If they were 6-5 when Deshaun comes back, they could easily get to the playoffs. But as a result, I think it's going to be Cincinnati or Denver getting that last spot, because eventually Denver or Vegas, one of those teams, is going to figure things out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Levi Wallace, I've seen some people discussing him. He's like in and out between like the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th cornerback. They play Akello Witherspoon a lot. He didn't play last week. They played Levi exclusively there. Sutton's mainly their corner 1 right now. So they definitely kind of mix and match that cornerback room, similar to what the Bills were trying to do, but with, in my opinion, worse players. Trey Norwood played a lot last week, Oklahoma Sooner from draft pick from last year. So there's definitely some in and out going on in the cornerback room, as well as Arthur Mollett, a guy that has played a good amount too, in and out of the lineup. So they have guys that have played a game here and a game there, and Levi's in that mix occasionally. He's like corner 1, sometimes he's corner 4. It's just an interesting already look as compared to like Minka Fitzpatrick and Terrell Edmonds, their safeties who play every snap. So just really interesting mix what they're doing with between 5 corners to play like 3 spots. So they're kind of like giving games here, little injuries there. So they're doing some interesting things at the DB position. But yeah, Mike, when it comes to the Browns, I think they could have had a chance at the final wild card spot as well. I do think the Bengals will figure it out enough. I don't know how much, but they'll figure it out enough to be in that final wild card position come the end of the year as well. And always going to be putting pressure on whoever gets to play them in the 2-7 matchup. That's going to be an interesting matchup for whoever does have to score the Bengals coming in. But they're not even ticking on the cylinders that they were last year, in my opinion. So
they didn't look right against Miami either. The Bengals don't look like the same team they were last year.
No, the Miami was finally beat themselves for once, which was really interesting and good to see. But so, guys, we have the film room coming up at 9. Going to be a good show going on over there. Make sure you get out, tune in, and appreciate everybody from listening into our show. We're going to have still a pretty good guest schedule. Today was me and Mike, but I definitely have some guests lined up for the future. Tyson Rauch's coming up soon with the Jets. That's going to be a fun one, at least if they're winning some games. I love bringing in the Jets guys, but Underdog Fantasy, use promo code COVER1 will match up to $100 on your first deposit. Really great platform. Best ball fantasy football is amazing. It's season-long leagues. Do best ball. They set your lineup based on the best players on your roster. You don't have to worry about it. You set it and forget it. Get out there to Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code COVER1 and we'll match $100 of your deposit to win anything possible over there. It's a real fun time with Underdog, Mike. Last question I had for you. I got to put it on record. One final question. You should know where this is going. Do you roster Zach Moss? Do you give him the football any longer?
Oh my God. So
you made me hear it all preseason about how we're underestimating him.
I don't care either way.
Okay. All right.
Whatever the Bills do, they do. I was just telling you during camp, during the preseason, what I thought the Bills coaching mindset was. Okay. And I thought they had a role for him. The one thing I did not expect going into the season is how much they would wait on James Cook to earn his role. I thought, okay, you ease him in, you make him earn his time, but to just basically not have him even part of the game plan has been fascinating to me. I understand he had the fumble on his first carry. I understand he had a drop last week, but I would like to see him a little bit more just to see what he can do. Because right now, I get it. You stick with what you're familiar with. Zach Moss has been in the league now his third year. Cook is a rookie. But I think Cook deserves some of these carries. So, yeah, I'm finally on the same page as you. Although Moss hasn't been horrendous, the line has also been horrible in front of him. And the last thing I want to say, because I know you do have to get going soon. I don't know if you want to make picks, but I want to pick the Bills this week.
Yeah.
27-13 over Pittsburgh. The last I checked, the line was 14. So if it stays that way, I have it going as a tie once again. But I don't see any avenue that the Steelers can win this game. The only way I could see it possibly happening is if they are successful running the ball, able to keep the clock moving, and their defense gets off to a strong start where they force a turnover and get a cheap touchdown off of a pick six or a fumble recovery in the red zone. Because other than that, I don't think they're going to be able to move the ball. If this gets to a game where Pittsburgh's down double digits, the Bills are set up perfectly, where you're starting to make Kenny Pickett throw it in the air against your number one ranked secondary. So don't like the odds on that. And then a little subtle brag, 33-14-1 money line against the spread over under last week. If you want to get some NFL good picks, follow me on Tally Sports in the future, Kev.
Mike's Tally site is popping off over there. Mike's Tally site. Shout out to Mike for having his first big Tally site week. I think I was the sixth ranked money line expert this week, 13-3 myself. So definitely follow the Cover One podcast network's Tally site, as there's definitely been some high performers there on the Tally site network. I think I finished like top 30 last year. In all of rankings. Mike's making a boost himself. So we'll have to track Mike, and we'll have to Mike's a sharp in disguise. So we'll have to track Mike's Tally site going on. But as far as the game prediction goes, I have 31-13. That's what's been sticking out for me for a while. It's going to be one of those sloppy second quarters. You watch it happen. It's going to be like one of those where they're loitering around, where it's like 13-6. We'll see something like that happen, but then the Bills, as always, just dominate, even in losses in the fourth quarter for most of Josh Allen's career. Whether he's playing good or the team, it's both or one or the other, but definitely a lot to go. Love watching this team in the fourth quarter. So get out there, check out our tally sites. Please smash like to bring us content. The Cover One Film Room's coming up here shortly here in the next hour, so make sure you do tune into that and become a premium subscriber. We love seeing you guys in your shirts going out. We're retweeting all of that all week long. So your shirts, your subscription, be access to the Slack channel, which is roaring. Like, it's roaring. If you remember the Bills message board, the Slack channel is roaring during the game. So get out there, subscribe, get in to be a One Pass member, and learn the game through experts like Eric and Anthony and Kendall and others, and stay for the fun like us in the Air Raid Hour and other shows that we have here on the podcast network. But from the Going Deep podcast, the Bills victory Monday yesterday, it's Tuesday today, and hopefully we'll continue the Bills victory Mondays going forward next week, right into the prime time slot Bills KC game. Kevin, Mike, we'll catch you here same time every Tuesday, 7:00, right here on the Cover One Podcast Network.
Josh Allen, looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action. Allen